So good afternoon, everyone. And it's really a pleasure being with you this afternoon. Allow me to start off by acknowledging the leadership of KHF, led by Dr. Gakombe, Vinod, who's here, the committee members, Dr. Nyalita. We really appreciate you inviting us to have this discussion with the leadership team and the subsequent one that we will have with your general membership and stakeholders. So for me, the assignment here is very simple. We wanted to just take the opportunity to formally introduce who the UN Global Compact is and also appraise you on how you can join individually as signatories to really work collectively to deliver this particular objective around ensuring that we are leaving the world a better place. So without much further ado, I have a presentation that I'll guide you through. As introduced, I'm Judy Njino, the Executive Director of the Global Compact Network here in Kenya. The local network is the country network of the United Nations Global Compact that's supporting in-country signatories to advance responsible business conduct. We are present in over 70 countries across the globe, but here in Kenya, we've been around since 2005. So I'll take you through this presentation outline just to introduce the initiative, the 10 principles and the SDGs, which are really the framework around which we try to galvanize business action on corporate sustainability, the support that we offer private sector, and then how to go about joining a very practical discussion on how to actually achieve that. All right, next slide, please. So just to introduce the UN Global Compact formally, the initiative was first proposed in the year 1999 by the former UN Secretary General, Dr. Kofi Annan. And he was basically speaking to business leaders across the globe who had gathered at the World Economic Forum in Davos. And he made a proposition to the business leaders in a room such as this one. And he said, can we, the United Nations, and you, the business community, can we come together to advance shared values as anchored in the UN? And so out of that particular speech that he made, the UN Global Compact as an initiative was born. Next slide, please. And that was in the year 2000. And since then, it's grown to be the world's largest corporate sustainability initiative with close to 16,000 participating businesses across the globe. And because we are a business-led organization, we are also multi-stakeholder in nature, meaning we do appreciate that other sectors have a critical role to play in helping us deliver on the Sustainable Development Agenda. Of course, appreciating that a lot of these efforts were driven by governments previously, but we are now saying that the business community, as drivers of commerce, drivers of innovation, job creation, they can have an outsized impact on those development outcomes that we seek. So we do have 3,800 of these participants from the non-business sector, and they range from the academia, labor organizations, NGOs, civil society organizations. So our participants are spread across the globe in over 160 countries, and we do have in-country 70 local networks or country networks that have been launched to really support the in-country signatories to contextualize what corporate sustainability means within that particular local context. We have 87 million employees that are within this Global Compact participating companies, and this helps you to see the depth and the scale with which we actually influence people. So if we have good corporate citizens, and I think Dr. Gakombe, you alluded to this with the example that you just gave with Metropolitan, ensuring that your people are able to actually own something for themselves, land, which is critical, and to have something that they can be able to, basically advance their own personal goals, but of course using the power of business to support such aspirations. That's what we are talking about in practical terms. Next slide. So the 10 principles of the UN Global Compact really are the framework around which we mobilize business action for. They are summarized around 4 key issue areas touching on human rights, the environment, labor, and anti-corruption. And they pretty much summarize what corporate sustainability or what corporate responsibility is. They are the fundamental or the baseline responsibilities that for any organization or business out there that claims to be, responsible. These are the things that you need to pay attention to. And if you read them principle by principle, they're actually common sense things that we are asking the private sector to do. But over and above, we're asking you to go beyond what is written in law, because some of these principles are firmly anchored in national legislations and international commitments. They are also, anchored within universal conventions that we have, of course, signed off as countries. Kenya is a signatory to each and every one of these conventions, and a lot of them, you will see them being expressed in different legislations and other commitments from government. So this is what really we mobilize business action and commitments around, but more importantly, action around how this can be translated more practically in business strategy and procedures, and ultimately business culture. Next slide. So fast forward to 2015, we know the Sustainable Development Goals were launched, and these really were a set of framework or a blueprint, if you like, for our collective aspirations as humankind for the world that we would like to see by the year 2030. And they really summarize key issues that we are currently struggling with as a global business community. And as a global compact, we are saying that business have an important role to play in delivering on this ambitious agenda. Coming from the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, they were typically a government agenda, and we actually missed some of the targets because private sector was really not involved, and other stakeholder groups were not as heavily involved. And so when the SDGs were formulated, we were very deliberate in ensuring that the business community would bring the full force and the weight to deliver and to turn these challenges into business opportunities. So we look at these two, the 10 principles of the UN Global Compact and the SDGs, as twin agendas around which business, can really contribute to our vision of sustainable development by the year 2030. But it's also important to note that the SDGs are time-bound. They expire in the next 8 years. We are not doing too well if you look at some of the goals, and I'll expose them later on. And so what we are asking and how we are trying to work with the private sector is really to accelerate our contributions, moving beyond just incremental, nice things that we are doing, but looking at also partnerships and sector, approaches to really scale and bring the impact ultimately to deliver on these goals by the year 2030. So the 10 principles for us are sort of like everlasting, they're timeless. They will continue to remain as those fundamental responsibilities that businesses must meet beyond even the expiration of the SDGs, or even should we articulate a new set of goals. Next slide. And the business community within the Global Compact family is already making a lot of progress. Since the initiative was launched in the year 2000, we conduct annual surveys, polling our CEOs to understand, what they think they're doing with regards to the commitments that they have made. And many of them are actually saying they're taking, action on the SDGs. 88% from this last year's report done by Accenture. And you can see in terms of the policies and the practices that are in place across the 10 principal areas, that's what the business leaders are telling us. But ultimately, they're also saying that our global and economic systems need to refocus on equitable growth. So we are seeing, of course, especially around this region, emerging economies, our economies are growing. Yes, we can see GDPs, are increasing in leaps and bounds, but the reality is that we are actually also experiencing widening inequality. So we are not actually lifting people out of poverty. The rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. So this is something that we need to correct, and we believe sustainability has the power to sort of like equalize some of the positive outcomes that are resulting from commerce, but ensuring that we have widespread benefits across different people within society, but as well as ensuring that the environment is equally protected. Next slide. So this is just a continuation to just show the level of progress that participants within the UN Global Compact are making across key metrics that we are tracking within the initiative. And we have identified a set of goals which we think businesses should have an outsized impact in delivering, because these are the goals that we are observing, tracking the SDGs, that we are actually at risk of not really achieving them by the year 2030. And so one of the, of course, and I think this is an ongoing conversation, we are already facing it even here, the climate crisis. As a global community, we are at risk of actually increasing the global temperatures to 3 degrees. And so we are trying to mobilize participants within the movement to ensure that they firmly contribute to targets that will at least halt the rise in global temperatures. So out of this, we have a particular program that we are galvanizing support and asking companies to commit and come with credible plans around which they can limit emissions from their own companies. So to date, we have 1,400 companies that have signed up to this particular initiative, and these are from really sensitive sectors that are high emitters. But we are also saying that we need a critical mass. We need governments to also provide the right signaling to help companies make the necessary transitions to ensure that we are growing our economies in a sustainable way. Gender equality, I think, is also one of those things that we continue to struggle with. Of course, the statistics don't look good, and so we are also saying that businesses have an equal responsibility to see what they can do to really close the gender gap within our lifetimes. We are also doing quite a bit of work around business innovation, looking at the SDGs as a business blueprint or a business plan that companies can also begin to innovate around some of the challenges. So we are working with a number of our signatory companies in country to also begin to see how they can translate the particular business goals to achieve some of the SDGs. Next slide. So despite all of these things, it's clear that we are still not on track to meet these goals by the year 2030. And I think that's why it's critical for us to have these conversations with organizations such as KHF, because we can only reverse a lot of the negative trends we are seeing through collective action. The 16,000 companies that we have in the UN Global Compact are just a drop in the ocean. So think about all the other businesses that are out there that continue to do business as usual. And so we are saying that despite all these efforts, despite the commitments that we already have, we still have a long way to go. And I think the slides pretty much paint a picture on a snapshot of some of the SDGs that we are currently tracking. But ultimately, we are saying the Social Progress Index estimates that we are 62 years behind, and this particular target continues to widen year on year. And as long as we are having also shocks like the pandemic and other things coming our way, the climate crisis, we risk really leaving a lot of people behind. Next slide. Next slide, please. So coming to the healthcare sector, and we really think it's an important and a central sector for which we need to have this conversation and bring a lot of you on board to really deliver some of the outcomes that we want to see within the Sustainable Development Agenda. I think you're best placed to tell us, what the impact of COVID did. You saw it firsthand. But ultimately, we know that it exposed how fragile our healthcare systems are, and how interconnected some of these issues are to other things, our ability to, secure livelihoods, and, the impact also on the ability for us to run our businesses. So this really was an exposition, and I think a case study of why we need to pay attention and why this particular sector is so critical. But we see the SDGs as an excellent pathway or a framework around which we can help correct a lot of the things that we are seeing not working in our current systems. Next slide. And so, according to the World Health Organization, we've been able to articulate some strong building blocks around which we think we can be able to reform or, repurpose the healthcare system to ensure that we build sustainable and resilient, infrastructure that can really help withstand a lot of the shocks that we actually anticipate to experience more. And many of us know that COVID is probably, it was just a test. We don't know what else is coming our way. So we think that there's a lot of opportunities around some of these things to help us better manage and anticipate some of the challenges in a way that we can manage what could be coming our way in future, but also ensuring that no one is left behind at the end of the day. So for us, the outcomes that we will be seeking is that there's access. No one is being left behind, but there's also quality in terms of the kind of care that we provide, and more importantly, that it's affordable. And these are things I think present opportunities for us at the moment, because there are issues that we are currently struggling with. Next slide. So this is just a representation of how we see the Sustainable Development Goals coming into play, and how ultimately we think they can provide sort of like the injection to really build these strong, healthy, and sustainable healthcare systems. And we help you to unpack what it means practically, goal by goal, and how that translates to the healthcare system. And of course, all this has to be anchored through the 10 principles of the UN Global Compact, which, as I said, are really the consolidating or the galvanizing framework around responsible business conduct. So we are working with our sector participants around these particular issues and helping them to really translate practically what it means to deliver on the SDGs using that sector approach. Next slide. But having said all that, I think it's also important to note that the SDGs won't be delivered by chance. And we like to say that there's a method to the madness. Many of us are claiming that we are actually contributing to the goals in one way or another, and it's true we are, but in the way that we will actually deliver impact, we need to actually follow a specific methodology. And that's why Global Compact is critical and other sustainability initiatives, because then they show you how to do it in the right way and how to do it in a way that you don't also have negative externalities. And if we could just even give an example, the current race to really transition to green energy. We're having a lot of these renewable energy projects, and what we are also seeing is adverse impacts on communities. We're having examples of companies going to uproot whole rural communities so that they can, put up these wind farms. So while on the one hand, of course, you're addressing these issues around, green energy, on the other hand, you're also creating negative impacts on this end. And this is not the kind of, way or the way we want, businesses to contribute to the SDGs. We need you to have a holistic view of some of the issues that could arise and have mitigating plans around how you can actually deliver on this. So we do support you to understand the SDGs, taking the 10 principles as a key factor, and this really is the framework around which it will help you to stem a lot of the negative impacts from your good practices. And then we help you to prioritize. The SDGs are robust. The 17 goals, the 169 targets, not any company can claim to deliver on any one of them comprehensively. So it's important to see where you can plug in using your core strength. And so helping you to prioritize, and we have tools and resources that we take you through that process. Critically setting ambitious goals. So it's not enough to just say that we will do, the small actions that we are seeing across the globe, but we are saying that we need to stretch our levels of ambition, we need to act at scale, and we need to also partner across sectors to really close the gap between now and 2030. And then embedding the SDGs into core business, and ultimately transparency and accountability, which is also an important piece, because what doesn't get measured, doesn't get done. So it's critical that we also communicate and learn from a lot of the things that we are doing. Next slide. So we basically exist as a global compact to help business cut through the complexity. Sustainability, it's a complex concept, and there are very many, ways, there are standards, there are ideologies, but what we are saying is that we have a universal framework that helps you basically speak the same language, whether you're operating here in Kenya, or you're in Turkey, or whichever part of the world, or whatever size of business that you operate. So the Global Compact does exist to walk you through and help you unpack what these issues are practically. Next slide. Next slide. So here in Kenya, as mentioned, we have been around since the year 2015. We are hosted by the Kenya Association of Manufacturers alongside KEPSA as well as FKE, because we are a business-led organization, therefore we seek to engage the wider private sector, and so we work collaboratively with these trade associations to also reach out to their membership, because that's the only way we will be able to make progress. The Kenya network is the largest network in Africa as well as the Middle East region, and I think it's, again, a testament that the private sector in Kenya is really alive to a lot of these issues. I think we saw the president, co-hosting the Sustainable Ocean Conference with Portugal, and just the level of leadership we have actually taken around some of the issues that we are currently grappling with. Of course, we are top 8 even in contributing to green energy across the globe. So we always say that let's not leave Africa to be the continent where narratives around poverty, lacking, exist. We need to lift the narrative and to really show that we are leading from the front. And we are leading with good things, but ultimately a lot of these good things also have to translate to tangible outcomes for people and planet. Next slide. So I usually don't like to go into the business case, because the reality is the business case for sustainability is settled. We are no longer in an era where we are debating whether it's a good thing to have or it's a good thing to do. We are experiencing it firsthand. But the reality is it improves all these business outcomes, as you can see there. And ultimately, it does drive greater profitability. It does lower the cost of capital. If you're in a sector or a business where you're also trying to attract investors, these are the questions that everybody is asking, because nobody wants to deal with a corporate or an organization that is a risk. So everybody is looking out for themselves, and these would be the questions they would continuously ask. And remember, we are also in a global community, so we can no longer just operate within the confines of the country here. We are also trying to see how we can expand beyond the region and beyond. Next slide, please. And within the Global Compact, as I mentioned, we do see CEOs saying they see value in sustainability. And these really are words coming from corporate heads of large leading companies across the globe. And they're telling us that it does actually lead to some of these outcomes, such as brand increase, revenue growth, risk mitigation, cost reduction. And they see that into the future, sustainability will only become a strong imperative for how they actually deliver some of those positive outcomes. Next slide. So where do we come in, and what do we actually offer practically to businesses to be able to take on this journey because it's an abnormal conversation. The business of business has always been business, but it's no longer the case anymore. There's an expectation from your stakeholders to really pay attention and to deliver, wider positive outcomes beyond just making money and profitability. You have, employees, you have customers, you have communities who also have a stake in your business decisions as well as your business conduct. So for us at the Global Compact, both globally and in country, we provide you with best-in-class tools and resources to be able to translate these commitments practically into business action. We are also the platform where you can access partnerships with a range of stakeholders. Again, the issue of scale, the issue of collective action is critical to the work that we do. So you're able to also use the network and the movement to be able to identify other stakeholder groups that can speak the same language and basically abide by the same values that you do. It's also a global platform to showcase your company's sustainability ambition. We have a global reporting platform, but also a convening power that helps to expose a lot of the good practices. And I always tell my companies, when we have those global forums, we have UNGA coming up in September, let's see examples of more companies beyond Safaricom. And I think they're there in the healthcare sector. We are doing some very innovative, good things. I think I saw the example of the company that's actually manufacturing syringes and exporting. Why can't we also expose some of those case studies to the globe and we show that we are actually leading from the front in some of these things? So we call on you to take advantage of those platforms, and Anastasia, at least you will be able to also point us to some of those strong case studies. Again, networking opportunities similar to KHF and a number of other business associations. You can come and also engage, not just locally, but across the region and globally. And then, of course, it's the one platform that you can come to really advance your ESG competence. Next slide. So in brief, really, we offer the Global Compact as a platform where you can come to connect with industry peers and other stakeholders. You can come to learn, take a leadership role in a specific goal or a specific area, but more importantly, communicate, because when we communicate, then we are able to also inspire action beyond the four walls of our organization. And the 10 principles really are the galvanizing framework and the SDGs to do just this. Next slide. So the next couple of slides just to provide you an example of what is available in terms of access to tools, resources, and support. We do offer guidance. We have a robust, extensive online library that provides you with all the different topical tools around ESG that you can open. Basically, it's unglobalcompact.org. You can go in there and extract a lot of these guidance tools. They are free, it's open source, so it's not just restricted to Global Compact participants, but it really just helps you to understand and translate those commitments more practically. Next slide. The tools is something that participating companies join actually the initiative to access. And we have tools that help you to understand your starting point. So if you're starting on your sustainability journey, it's critical that you do a basic assessment so that you know where you are at and where you need to go. So we do have a number of these across different topical issues. Next slide. And then our biggest seller is our Academy platform, which is our online learning platform that's accessible to only Global Compact participants. And once you are in the initiative, you're able to access a wide array of tools, topics, and issues that are actually expert-led and that help you to really translate your ESG commitments more practically. So you're able to also integrate it into your internal learning systems and use it to also ensure the entire business is aligned in terms of the learning outcomes that you wish to see. And we've also seen companies even using it as a performance improvement tool, or rather something that employees can access to, again, improve on their learning outcomes around sustainability issues. Next slide. We do have working groups as well, which are small sort of like clusters of companies that they come together. So if you're interested in diving into a particular issue, you're able to connect into any one of these particular topics. And the beauty is that, especially for SMEs who might not necessarily know where to plug in or what to do, they're able to then get support from those who have gone beyond in the journey. So it's one of the platforms that many of the members see a lot of value in. Next slide. And then our accelerators are really just programs that we have designed to help close the gaps that we are seeing in delivering on the SDGs by the year 2030. So we've identified specific SDGs that we think are at risk of not being achieved in the next 8 years, and we are working with the corporates who volunteered to partake these programs to really scale and to set ambitious targets so that they can translate these commitments more robustly within their business strategies. And we have upcoming ones around human rights and women's entrepreneurship in 2023. Next slide. Policy and advocacy is also a critical tool or avenue around which we also seek to mobilize, or rather to influence the ecosystem where business operates. And we keep saying that the efforts of one or two companies is good, but it's important that also government plays its part in signaling the right things that need to be seen within the business operating environment. And so we do have conversations and platforms with the key custodians of our 10 principles. And this is just a pictorial when we hosted the president in 2015. And we basically put forward the Bribery Act, which was a joint initiative with KEPSA and a few other corporate organizations. And we are basically saying that we actually own the problem of corruption in the country, and we are willing to work with the government to do our part as private sector. So for us, policy and advocacy is a critical part of our work, and just ensuring that we get everybody playing by the same rules. So as I come towards the end, really to join is simple. To join the initiative is quite straightforward. All it requires is a letter of commitment from the highest level executive, could be the CEO or the board members. And basically the reason why we insist on that leadership commitment is that we look at sustainability as a leadership issue. It's not CSR or philanthropy, as is always the expression, especially in this market. So when you join, basically you're saying that you're willing and you're ready to trigger some of those policy and procedure adjustments within business. And that can only be led, at the top level of the business leadership. But it also means you have to be willing to engage in continuous performance improvement. Again, appreciating that there's no one single company that is perfect. We are all on a journey, and it's important that we own that, but more importantly, that we are committed to improving. So if you're looking or tracking your water targets or your energy use, have a baseline and then have sort of like a roadmap to, again, push the level of ambition around some of those things. It means also being open to dialogue with your stakeholders. Corporate sustainability is all about how you're impacting both positively but also mitigating some of the negative externalities. So we do encourage our participants to have these, open conversations with their stakeholders and to be able to also take a lot of this feedback in and make the necessary adjustments to drive those improvements. And last, it's also a commitment to, accountability and transparency. and we do have a public disclosure platform. I think the stock market, the NSE, the regulators are also signaling locally that it's now going to become mandatory for companies to begin to communicate the impacts of their performance just beyond the bottom line. We are seeing this with listed companies, but for Global Compact participants that have already been doing this, should this also translate to the wider private sector, it's important to also have that foresight to see where the world is going and to begin to act on some of these things. So the Global Compact also allows you to preempt where the world is going and what you need to do as a business. Next slide. So this is just the joining process. Basically, it takes, it's an application process that is conducted online, and you just need to upload your commitment letter and complete the online application form. Then we do the due diligence, and within a week or two, you're admitted into the initiative and attached to the country network where you have your operations. Next slide. So these are just a snapshot of the companies that we currently have within the network. These are companies representing every sector within the business community, also subsidiaries of multinationals that are currently active within the country. And we do also have a big base of SMEs, not just the large brands. Next slide. That are also working firmly to really advance, corporate sustainability. And you can see those who are within the healthcare sector also coming in strong. And so we hope that probably in the upcoming meeting, we'll also see more of you join in. And we believe collectively we can be able to transform sustainability and transform Kenya using sustainability as the vehicle and also as the framework to correct a lot of the negative, issues that we are currently seeing. Next slide. Yeah, so that brings me to the end of the presentation. And it's my hope that at least we have a fair understanding of the initiative, what value it offers the business community, and we look forward to your engagement in the coming days. Thank you.